Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive. Today, we're going to get laser focused on muscle and strength gains. I think everybody listening knows the feeling of just endless articles online.
Oh, yeah.
Every, fitness influencer has their own little secret formula.
Oh, yeah.
So what we've done is we've kind of cut through all that noise and found a really powerful perspective on this topic. And this one's built on observing the results of thousands of people,
Right.
not just, a lucky few.
Absolutely.
So our mission today is to give you the 3 absolutely indispensable elements
All right.
for building muscle and getting stronger. And these principles are developed by Pete Sisco, the co-developer of Power Factor Training
Yeah.
and Static Contraction Training.
Okay. So Pete Sisco has been rigorously applying math and physics to strength training since 1992. He's a huge advocate for a scientific measurable approach.
Okay.
He's authored several books on his methods.
Yeah.
Even served as editor for Iron Magazine's bodybuilding book series. His work's not some fleeting trend either. It's been used and translated worldwide.
Right.
An estimated 150,000 people have utilized his power factor training and static contraction training. So these 3 elements that we're going to discuss, these are fundamental principles
Yeah.
that have proven their worth through widespread application.
All right, so let's get straight to it. For anybody out there serious about building muscle and boosting strength, what are those 3 non-negotiable elements? The first one we're diving into is high-intensity overload.
Okay.
Now, this one, the name sounds a little technical,
Right.
but the core idea is something I think we can all grasp.
Yeah, I think so too. It's what's fascinating about this one is the analogy. Muscles respond to the intensity
Right.
of the workload, much like your skin tans in response to the intensity of sunlight. So more intense sun exposure leads to a darker tan.
Okay.
Forcing your muscles to work significantly harder than they're used to
Right.
is what triggered them to grow larger and stronger. Think about it. Your body has all these muscles accustomed to a certain level of output, in your daily life.
Right.
To kickstart new growth, you have to push them way beyond that norm.
Mm-hmm.
So force your muscles to work significantly harder than usual to trigger growth.
Okay, so force significantly harder. That makes sense. And that's where lifting heavy weights comes into play.
Absolutely.
It's, kind of the most direct way to deliver that higher intensity of overload. The principle here is that when you subject your muscles to a really demanding, high-intensity workout, it sends a powerful signal to your nervous system. It's almost as if your body's saying, whoa,
Hey,
this is a serious challenge.
Yeah, this is serious.
Our current strength level isn't enough to handle this regularly.
We better build some more muscle to make this feel easier in the future.
And then, once that new muscle is built, you're ready to push even harder.
That's the idea. And that's where the idea of actually measuring this intensity comes in.
Okay.
Pete Sisco's work with power factor training was all about finding ways to precisely measure this muscular output. His methods focus on quantifying the intensity of your muscle contractions, really helping you ensure that you're truly achieving that high overload, which eventually led to the development of tools like the Precision Trainer, which can kind of automate those calculations for you.
Okay.
But the core message for you is this high-intensity overload isn't just a suggestion. It's absolutely essential for making real progress in both muscle size and strength.
Okay, so we know how hard we need to push with high-intensity overload.
Right.
But the next crucial piece of the puzzle is understanding how to keep making progress over time, which brings us to our second indispensable element, progressive overload.
This one might sound obvious, but it's often where people unknowingly hit plateaus.
Yeah.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture of how your body adapts, it becomes really clear. Your body's incredibly efficient.
Yeah.
Once it adapts to a specific level of high-intensity work, that level becomes its new normal. To continue stimulating growth, you have to consistently challenge it.
Yeah.
With increasing demands. Simply repeating the same heavy lifts, workout after workout, won't cut it. If your goal is to keep building muscle,
that makes sense.
So don't just consistently lift more over time.
Okay, so consistently lift more over time. It's almost like trying to get an even deeper tan by sitting in the same amount of sunlight day after day. Eventually, you're just going to plateau.
Yeah. And it's,
And what's really interesting, too, is this concept of regressive overload
yeah,
that comes up, and this idea that some people have about needing to cycle back
right.
to lighter weights
Yeah,
or less intense workouts. It's using that tanning analogy again.
yeah,
It's like going into the shade
right.
after you've gotten a tan and somehow expecting it to get darker,
Exactly.
like physiologically.
Yeah.
It just doesn't really add up if
Yeah.
your goal is continuous growth.
It doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
So this raises an important question. For anybody listening,
Okay.
are your workouts consistently pushing you beyond your previous bests? The principle of progressive overload states definitively
Right.
that no two workouts should be exactly the same. If your aim is muscle growth,
Okay.
not just maintenance,
Right.
every exercise in every session should aim for a slightly higher intensity than the last time you performed it
Okay.
for those same muscles.
So always trying to push a little bit harder. Now that might sound a bit daunting, the idea of always having to lift more, but the underlying principle reassures us that consistent progress is indeed possible with
Right.
rational training. Think about it. Why put in the effort of going to the gym and lifting heavy
Right.
if it's not measurably moving you closer to your goals?
Yeah.
You know, every workout requires energy and recovery resources, so it should ideally yield
Yeah.
some tangible step forward, however small.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that directly leads us to the third indispensable element, which for many might be the most counterintuitive
Okay.
piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Variable training frequency.
Okay.
So we're often told we need to stick to a fixed training schedule,
Okay.
like hitting the gym 3 days a week.
Right.
You know, this perspective argues that trying to combine high intensity and progressive overload with a rigid schedule is a common recipe for stalled progress,
Okay.
injuries, and even burnout.
Okay, so let's really dig into this. Why is a fixed schedule problematic when you're consistently pushing
Okay.
for high intensity and trying to progressively overload your muscles?
What's fascinating about this one is how your body's recovery needs actually change as you become stronger.
Okay.
A fixed schedule simply doesn't account for this dynamic.
Right.
You know, as you become capable of lifting heavier weights and generating more intense workouts,
Yeah.
your body naturally requires more time to recover
Okay.
and rebuild those tissues.
Right.
If you're adhering to a strict schedule, you might be hitting the gym again before your body has fully repaired itself
Yeah.
from the previous intense session.
Right.
And that's where those negative consequences
Right.
start to creep in.
Right.
You know, we're talking about increased risk of quitting,
Right.
you know, out of frustration,
Right.
picking up injuries,
Yeah.
getting sick more easily, and hitting those frustrating plateaus where you just stop seeing any results,
Right.
no matter how hard you work.
Right.
You know.
So what's the solution?
The solution proposed here
Yeah.
is to adopt a variable training frequency.
Okay.
This means adjusting the amount of rest you take
Okay.
between your workouts based on how fully recovered you are
Okay.
from the previous session.
So it's not even necessarily about the number of days.
It's not. It's
Yeah.
about how you feel.
Yeah.
Think of it like this. There's an optimal window of time
Okay.
for your next productive workout. Train again too soon, and you risk overtraining.
Okay.
And hindering your progress way too long, and you might start to lose some of the adaptations
Okay.
you gained from your last intense effort. The key is finding that sweet spot where you're fully recovered
Yeah.
and your body is primed for another high-intensity stimulus. You know, so take away, listen to your body, and rest until fully recovered for your next intense session.
Okay, so rest until fully recovered. The example given of a workout on the first of the month
Right.
is really illustrative. It shows that you might feel ready to train again as early as the 6th,
Right.
or you might genuinely need until the 19th to fully recover and be able to have another truly productive workout.
You know, the caveman analogy really drives this point home.
Okay,
After a major physical exertion, like facing a dangerous animal or whatever,
right,
you know, the body's immediate priority isn't building new muscle.
right.
It's about replenishing energy stores and repairing any existing tissue damage
Right.
to ensure survival. Muscle growth, as we understand it now,
Yeah.
primarily happens during sleep,
Oh, good God.
but only if you've allowed your body sufficient time and resources for full recovery. You know, if you're constantly stressing your system
Yeah.
before it's had a chance to rebuild, that growth process is significantly hampered.
Makes sense. it makes perfect sense why
Right.
fixed schedules might seem to work
Yeah.
initially, especially for those just starting out.
Yeah. When the training loads aren't as high,
Oh, yeah.
your body can bounce back relatively quickly. Um, the example shows this theoretical increase in recovery time
Right.
from just 18 hours initially to
Okay.
potentially 29,
Okay.
then 46.2, and eventually 63.8 hours as you become stronger
Right.
and the workouts become more demanding.
Right. Yeah.
A fixed
Okay.
3 days a week schedule quickly becomes inadequate as your recovery needs increase.
Makes sense.
And to really highlight this, consider the example things of highly advanced individual who might train a specific muscle group
Right.
only once every 6 weeks.
Wow.
So they might do one intense workout A,
Right.
then need a full 6 weeks to recover, separately for another productive workout B,
Okay.
targeting the same muscles. They still make progress.
Right.
Because the intensity of each session is so incredibly high that it necessitates
Right.
that extended recovery period. Trying to force those individuals
Yeah.
into a typical 3 times a week schedule
Right.
would be utterly counterproductive.
Yeah, that would be insane. So to really nail this down, it's not just about lift the heavy in a single workout.
Right.
It's about consistently increasing that heavy lifting over time.
That's right.
And crucially, giving your body the necessary and variable amount of rest it needs to recover and rebuild after those intense efforts. High intensity overload, progressive overload, and variable training frequency. These are the 3 essential pillars for anyone serious about muscle and strength gains,
Absolutely.
according to this deep dive.
So as you're planning your next workout, ask yourself these important questions.
Okay.
First, are you truly delivering the highest possible intensity to the specific muscles you're targeting
Okay.
with each and every exercise? Second, how can you be absolutely certain that the intensity you achieve in today's session
Right.
will be measurably greater than what you accomplished in your last workout
Okay.
for those same muscles?
Okay.
And finally, how will you know, without a shadow of a doubt, that you are fully recovered from your previous training
Right.
before you step back into the gym?
Wow. Those are powerful questions to really sit with and consider if you're interested in exploring this more rational and ultimately more productive approach to training. The source material strongly suggests checking out http://www.precisiontraining.com. There's a lot more detailed information there for you to delve into.
So bring it all together concisely. Remember these core takeaways.
Okay.
High-intensity overload is the spark that initiates muscle growth. Progressive overload is the consistent fuel that drives it forward. And variable training frequency is the absolutely vital element that allows your body the necessary time to recover, adapt, and ultimately become stronger.
And remember, these aren't just random fitness opinions floating around. These are presented as fundamental principles deeply rooted in human physiology, principles that have held true and been observed across a wide range of individuals over a significant period of time.
This leads to a really important final thought for you to consider.
Okay.
How do these principles challenge some of the common fitness advice you might have come across in your own journey? Take a moment to really think about your current training approach.
Okay.
Are you consistently striving to increase intensity? Are you actively tracking and working towards progressive overload? And perhaps most importantly, are you truly in tune with your body's recovery signals and adjusting your training frequency accordingly? Ponder the crucial balance between relentlessly pushing your limits and allowing your body the sufficient time it needs to rebuild and come back even stronger. It's within that often overlooked balance that truly sustainable and significant progress lies.